cold out. Yeah, my back window is like frosted over completely. I've got my defogger on, but it's not doing shit. It'll be defogged by the time we get halfway down the road. Minus 10, minus 11 by my car. Celsius. Minus 11 Celsius. What does that work out to in Fahrenheit? I don't know. I want to say about 15 degrees or 20 degrees. I'm not sure. It's cold though. So, what do I want to talk about? Okay. Leftism. I responded to a tweet by Dave Rubin on Twitter yesterday. I don't remember what his tweet was. Oh, yeah, it was regarding a number of people. I guess a recent article came out where people have dumped friends over the recent election, which is just sad. It's pathetic. But it happened, nonetheless. And what Dave Rubin was saying, he's found it more prevalent, the stories he's heard from people on the left saying because a friend supported Trump in the most recent election, they couldn't be friends with him anymore. Like I said, that's sad. It's ridiculous. But nonetheless, this he was finding was more prevalent on the left. To which I responded, it's not surprising. Leftism is predicated on collectivism. From that you get groupthink. And it's the same reason why leftists are the most racist. And I know that leftists won't necessarily believe this. Most people who consider themselves liberals. And when I say liberals, I don't mean classic liberals, where they believe in individual liberty. I mean liberals in the sense that they believe in progressive values of, fighting for the marginalized, fighting against oppression, that kind of thing. Being liberal activists are the most illiberal people I've ever met. And the attitude of the illiberal activist carries through to even those people who just consider themselves straightforward liberals. The funny thing is, I consider myself a classic liberal in the same sense that Dave Rubin is a classic liberal or Sargon of Akkad is a classic liberal. I think of individual liberty as being far more important than anything else. And freedom of speech is the most important freedom that people possess, because from freedom of speech, all other freedoms are derived. You can't exercise liberty without first being able to talk about liberty, or anything else for that matter. But I want to sort of unpack the idea that leftists, liberals, illiberals, are the most racist. And the reason for this is, as I said in the tweet, leftism is predicated on collectivism. Collectivism looks at everything in terms of groups. Oppressed class, oppressor class, right? It's Marxism. In modern times, with the privilege stack or the victimhood stack, however you want to call it, as Gad Saad calls it, the victimhood Olympics or the victim Olympics. Everybody's relegated to groups. So basically at the top you have the oppressor class, which are whites and males, and even more so white Christian heterosexual males are the most oppressor class, or are the highest on the totem pole of oppression. They oppress everybody. Everybody beneath them is oppressed, regardless of what their actual status in society is. by virtue of being white, being male, and being a Christian, you are the most oppressive person in existence, even if you're homeless. Even if you don't have $2 to rub together. Even if you're a high school dropout, even if you work in a shitty job, doesn't matter. You're white, you're male, you're heterosexual, and you're Christian, you are the worst of the worst. This is how the leftist views the world. People are in collective groups, right? Black people are oppressed. They're uniformly oppressed. It doesn't matter what their status is in society. Right? And that in and of itself is a very racist thing to say. So Dr. Ben Carson, under this logic, is a victim. Never mind the fact that he grew up in the projects and became a world-renowned neurosurgeon and is one of those highly educated people, in his field, in America. I mean that's debatable, I guess. But anyway, he's very highly educated, but because he's a black man, he's necessarily oppressed. Makes no sense whatsoever. He's been named Secretary of Housing and Urban Development by President-elect Donald Trump. But anyway, this is where this comes from. If you think of everything in terms of groups, if you view society, if you view the world in terms of people belonging to groups, and those groups exist in a stack of who's oppressed and who's an oppressor, you can't help but think of things in terms of racial terms, and that in and of itself is racist. And I mean racist in the classic definition of racism, not the Keith Ellison, what's his name, Michael Dyson? Something Dyson. Michael Eric Dyson, that's his name. Michael Eric Dyson, he's a presenter on MSNBC, who posited that racism is prejudice plus privilege, or prejudice plus power. And since black people don't have any power, they can't be racist. I mean, there's plenty of black people out there with power, but they're excused from having racist attitudes because they're black. That in and of itself is a racist idea. For me, I consider the classic definition of racism to mean you believe that your race is superior, or you're superior to somebody else because of your race, or they're inferior to you because of their race. You believe that certain genetic differences make a person lesser, and those genetic differences are derived from their race, from their belonging to a specific race. That's racism. Or believing that you need special treatment, you deserve special treatment because of your race. So the idea of affirmative action, that's why I say affirmative action is a racist policy. The notion that certain people are more deserving of special treatment because of their race is racist. It's not only racist in an exclusionary sense, in that it keeps people or disadvantages people who don't belong to that race, but it's racist in the sense that the people who are expected to benefit from affirmative action are judged as though they don't have any merit, individual merit on their own. They're judged from a position that you are necessarily disadvantaged simply because of your race. Now, if that's not a racist policy, I don't know what is. So it's like, I don't know, the left and the right have completely different ideas on what racism means. And it stems from the collectivist notion. The leftist views everything in terms of groups, in terms of belonging to a specific group. And so therefore, any individual who is either in a position of privilege or in a position of disadvantage, or who is disadvantaged, is so because of the group they belong to, and not because of individual choices they made, not because of their own individual strengths and weaknesses. It's because they belong to a class that is uniformly disadvantaged. And that is just absolute nonsense. Now, what this means is that if you look at everything from a group perspective, you can't help but judge people by the group they belong to. That's why leftists get so upset when a black person espouses ideas that don't conform to the liberal narrative, to the leftist narrative, to the democratic base of policy platform or platform policies or policy platform. They don't subscribe to that. If you got a conservative black man who says welfare is bad and we should do away with it, they're called either a coon or an Uncle Tom. They are disavowed by the Democratic Party. They are thrown under the bus and said, you're no true Scotsman. You're not a real black man. You're not black enough because you don't have the attitude that welfare is a good thing and it helps inner city blacks. I mean, this is again, it stems from this whole collectivist notion. You're not allowed to think outside a box. We're not interested in diversity of opinion. There's a right way of thinking and there's a wrong way of thinking. And if you are anywhere outside of our narrow Overton window of what is correct liberal thought, not only are you wrong, but you're a flawed individual. You're evil. You hate Group X. You're a racist. You're a bigot. You're a homophobe. And if this election should teach the left anything, it's that doesn't work. People used to scramble over themselves whenever they were accused of racism to say, I'm not a racist, blah, 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 blah. And they would give a myriad of excuses for why they're not racist. And it fell on deaf ears, and it was considered to be a joke by the left because they already knew you were a racist because you didn't think like they did. It doesn't work anymore, though. I mean, try as they might, they're still trying to keep that going in mainstream media and in discussions about cabinet appointments by the president-elect, in the discussion of attitudes of Trump supporters. I mean, this is a tactic they've been using forever, and I don't think it's a tactic that they use in a way that is. It's not a sinister tactic. I think they actually genuinely believe that anybody that doesn't think like them is a racist, and I think it comes from being indoctrinated in academia to believe that, to think that way. Anyway, I'm pulling into work. Can't talk about it much more. But yeah, those are just my thoughts on it. And I'm probably not saying anything new. I'm probably saying things that people are like, yeah, I knew that all along. But you don't hear it discussed. You don't hear it discussed openly in those terms. There's only a few people talking about it, and they're talking about it in very, very limited spheres of influence. But anyway, that's it. I'm done.